I did something I normally don't do when it comes to PvP talk from Bungie. I read the new Lightfall Crucible blog post like I was a PvE main, and what I found was that it was extremely lacking and wanting. Because for all of the talk regarding matchmaking changes and revamps coming and new game modes, there's not a whole lot in here that seems like it's doing more to get me to want to play PvP. More so, it's introducing a bunch of refinements to existing systems that supports PvP as it is, instead of changing it into something objectively better. We'll get into why I think that in a second, but first let me explain the shift in mindset. As a PvP main and someone who had the audacity to unironically call himself the Crucible Doctor at one point, I'm well aware that we are a dying breed of player in a game that has been doubling down on its efforts to make sure PvE is as fleshed out as it could possibly be. The players who play this game are PvE centric. Most of the content that gets produced for this game is PvE centric, and when PvP updates are released, it's a great source of joy and happiness for the hardcore PvP mains who stream on Twitch and have large followings on Twitter, representing the 1% of all Destiny players at best. It's the same story with Gambit main, though I think they're having a nap right now and I don't want to wake them up with any loud noises. When Bungie sees fit to communicate on PvP, the response from the wider community is very lukewarm at best. It ranges from, finally they said something, to, oh, that's kind of cool. And that tends to be about as excited as you can expect anyone to be about something that they're not really into. Like sharing your hobby with someone who kind of finds it cool that you're into something different, but not so much that they're willing to go and try it themselves. And speaking from the PvE player side of me, that's where I'm at with this new Crucible blog post. A bunch of words that kind of move the needle a bit, but we're still cruising at 50 and a 60. I'm not exactly doing backflips over some graphs. But the PvP side of me is very excited by the blog post, and not only because it's a fully fledged meal of a comms post, but also because it means I get to make Crucible content that's semi-relevant. I do miss when people actually cared about this side of the game, and any excuse to talk about PvP makes my heart giddy. Matchmaking changes, new game modes, explanation of skill in Destiny 2, competitive cosmetics, replacing the flawless pool with something people will actually want to play. These are all things we've been asking for years. This Crucible blog post is the largest dub for PvP in Destiny since they brought out the competitive playlist and people spent weeks and even months chasing not forgotten. Right. And so we come back to reality. There's such a disconnect between what makes PvP players happy versus what is actually appealing to PvE players. The Venn diagram is just two separate circles entirely, and you can never truly say that PvP gets better without doing something to entice PvE players back. So let's have this conversation about the blog post, what these changes are and what they actually mean. I won't get into the full details because you can find those yourself at the link down below. Let's just go through the highlights. For playlists, Bungie said they increased the chance that you'll play Control over Clash, and they changed the weighting of map appearances, pushing more close and mid-range maps higher like Javelin, Burnout, Rusted Lands, Midtown, and Wormhaven, whilst significantly decreasing the maps that were pushed so heavily last season like Disjunction and Cathedral of Dusk. Interestingly, Dead Cliffs is a Clash-only map now, whilst Anomaly and Cauldron returned with reduced weight, the latter being a Clash-only map too. Exodus Blue and Convergence were removed entirely, which is nothing but a positive for everyone. In the mid-season patch, they're making some more changes. Clash will be retired from Quick Play, which is now just going to be renamed Control since it's the only game type in that playlist now. Loose skill-based matchmaking will prioritize connection more than ever as it tries to find even matches. This is fantastic news for anyone who plays at non-NA peak times, doesn't live in Europe or North America, or is generally very highly skilled. The Rotator playlist will be split into two playlists, one called the Relentless Rotator, which will feature Clash, Rift, and Zone Control, and the other called Party Rotator, featuring the wackier stuff like Mayhem, Scorched, and Momentum Control. What this will do for population split is yet to be seen, though without any sort of targeted incentive to actually play those game modes, I don't expect their population to skyrocket anytime soon. When it came to matchmaking, Bungie took this time to explain their decision regarding Fireteam matchmaking and the results they've had since Season 19. According to the first chart, if you're solo, you're going to be matching only solos 39% of the time, or nearly 2 out of every 5 times. The chances of running into 2-stack with solos is 32.2%, then 2 stacks was 8.4%, and so on and so forth. 4 stacks will face other 4 stacks nearly 69% of the time. Nice. 5 stacks will face 5 stacks 84.6% of the time, and 6 stacks will face other 6 stacks 95.3% of the time. Now, they used week 2 of Iron Banner last season as their dataset, which is as good as any to test, and the data suggests it's working. From my experience, even being in the Middle East, where it's hard to account for these parameters, when I play solo, I'm never usually against more than 1 2-stack, and it's been a delight. They also say there's areas to improve. The first one is that fireteam matchmaking with 6 stacks will always prioritize finding a 6 stack, so much so that it seems to not care too much if there's a wide skill delta between the two teams. The second is that sometimes with a 6 stack, matchmaking takes so long that it will default to finding any match, resulting in a team of solos facing off against a stack, like the good old days. This only happens around 1% of the time, but still. They've announced they're changing both of these with the mid-season patch, so let's see. In 3v3, the story continues. Solos will match solos or duos with a solo 99.3% of the time. Duos will match other duos with a solo 98.1% of the time. And full teams will match each other 98% of the time. Anecdotally, this has also been my experience playing comp and trials. The comp section was purely highlights and justifications of their decision to use skill-based matchmaking over a ranked ladder. They had 2 main reasons for doing so. 1, to prevent smurfing, the act in which a high-skill player creates a new account purely to pub stomp against lower-skill players. 2, to prevent tanking, where high-skill players intentionally lose games to pub stomp lesser-skill players. There seems to be a healthy majority of players in the middle ranks of silver, gold, and platinum, whilst the other 4 ranks are much less populated. The obvious criticism is, of course, that it doesn't seem like a pure meritocracy. You can't really work your way up if the game assigns you a skill level that you can't see that matches a set rank. Like, what if you're silver with ambitions of being Ascendant? Win games, rank goes up, right? Not quite. In the post, they've acknowledged that these skill levels need a bit more fine-tuning and a bit more work to make it easier to help you break out. Now, this graph shows the distribution of players who have played 30 or more games. Thin line is the target, thick line is the actual. You can see that the rank versus skill relationship isn't as linear as it should be. And here's a graph that shows the same distribution but with folks who have played 150 games. The lines are now much closer together. So the model that they've employed does kind of work, but it takes a little bit too long to get there. But the long and short of it is that they want to make the 150 game lines appear in the 30 game graph. That, they say, will take some time. Now, in terms of rewards, they're adding some more to the playlist. 1, a new emblem that rotates every season upon hitting Ascendant rank, coming this season. 2, a transmat effect that will show your current rank, coming season 21. And 3, Rose will be replaced by a competitive sniper, coming season 21. That's it. There's also some quality of life adjustments coming regarding the spawn system, spawn overshields, and lobby balancing. Cool. Iron Banner. They want to make Rift more appealing, and they don't like the current challenge system that locks you to a certain subclass to earn a pinnacle. No specifics or dates were announced for those changes. Trials got fireteam matchmaking this season, and there's a Trials lab planned for later on to demo new changes to the matchmaking systems. The changes are: 2 active soft pools are going to be introduced to the Trials matchmaking system. The first pool is the Challenger pool, where most players who are Lighthouse regulars will end up playing the most. It's purely connection-based and gets rid of ticket-based matchmaking, which was based on wins, weekly wins, and overall skill. Anyone who doesn't have a loss on their card, even after resetting it, will be in this pool. The second pool is the Practice pool, targeting new or inexperienced Trials players. Also connection-based, it also takes into account weekly performance, which resets every week. Only players with a flawed card or those on their first game of the week can play in this pool, though if your fire team has members who don't meet these requirements, you'll go straight into the Challenger pool. The Practice pool has Stomp and Farming Protection. Stomp Protection basically lowers your skill rating to find you easier matches if you're having a rough go of it, whilst Farming Protection will detect and lock any potential abusers trying to farm the Practice pool into the Challenge pool for the remainder of the week. So essentially, if you are a lower skill player, the new matchmaking system will protect you a lot better. But the big highlights are the fact that there's no more flawless pool and connections are now prioritized for trials. They've also updated Passage of Wealth to give extra trials rank on every win, and Mercy now includes 2 losses before being flawed. Again, great changes to entice people to play more. There's also going to be a new flawless emblem for players who go flawless without ever going around down their whole card. That is going to be very, very hard to get. Zone Capture Elimination will be the new Trials mode, which they've renamed Dominion. And finally, game modes. Countdown is returning from Trials of the Nine, and it's got some variants to make things interesting. Hard to say what it is or how it will play until it's live. Checkmate is a new game mode that's coming in that should intentionally make things slower. They explicitly mentioned special ammo economy, ability recharge rates, player health, and weapon time to kill. They're looking to release it in Season 22, though if I can give an early piece of feedback, it's that please, for the love of God, do not change time to kill. We already went through this in Destiny 2 Year 1 and people hated it. Please. There's more to come, but they're not ready to share that stuff yet. Now, if you're a PvP main, you've read a whole bunch of this or listened to a whole bunch of this and said, yeah, okay, that's cool. Or, I'm not sure about this. If you're a PvE main, you are probably not here. You probably switched off and gone to watch another broken build video. And that is the problem. Not the broken build video, but this blog post. It wasn't so long ago that everyone was clamoring for any kind of comms from Bungie on PvP. I said it, Dado said it, Astacross said it, Reddit said it. Hell, even Joe Kentucky from Missouri said it while he was downing his 5th beer of the night in a drag bar. And Bungie have given us what we wanted. Beautiful communication, 2 to 3 years too late. Back then, there was a healthy, persistent contingent of PvP players to actually care about things like PvP communication. But the comms at the time and the lack of any meaningful content meant that the PvP player base largely decided to call it quits and move on to other games where their time, efforts, and crucially, their voices were better heard and represented. Now, all that's left of the old PvP community seems to be 3 anime profile pictures in a trench coat, aggressively teabagging anyone using something off-meta in a comp match. Of course, some of us still linger, but let's face facts. If you really cared about a solid PvP experience, you'd have moved on. We're just Destiny 2 addicts at this point, shooting the mans and yelling at our screens when somebody teleports for the 1052nd time because we can't get enough of the cocktail of gunplay, abilities, and space magic wizardry. When it works, to this day, it is just money. Which leaves us with the rest of the player base. A player base that are used to playing content for the prospect of the main driving factor behind playing a looter shooter, the loot, the rewards. The Destiny player base largely does not care about the intricacies of matchmaking. They care about the loot. What new gun can I chase? What exotic armor piece am I missing to get the best out of my subclass? How can I min-max my experience to create a build that makes the fun way I play Destiny even more fun? PvE players are motivated by rewards and fun. When PvP actually has rewards that make people care, is it any wonder that playlist numbers see huge highs? PvP players alone can't make Immortal get up to nearly 10 million kills. There's just not enough of us around, no matter how broken the weapon actually is. More players came into Trials because the chase of good loot was what mattered. You put a tasty carrot on the stick and people will happily spend all weekend chasing it. That's who Destiny players are. They're materially motivated. So to put out a Crucible blog post which promised the grand total of 1 emblem for the very best players in the game, a transmat effect, and a new weapon next season is hardly going to make people stand up on the edge of their seat, is it? Yes, making matchmaking more friendly and accessible is great, but it's for naught if there's no point for a looter-shooter player to enter PvP in the first place. Of course, the communication was fantastic. Truly, it was well written, and it's lovely to see the depth of the transparency. But it's come far too late for the people who would actually care about this thing. And at this point, it's only placating the people who will stick around regardless of what happens. Now, you gotta switch gears and worry about the people who are not playing PvP, because there's far more of them than there are of us who are actually playing. Universal ornaments, guns that do double duty in both sandboxes like Immortals, vanity rewards that don't require you to engage in the highest levels of PvP. It feels like we have a little bit of that already right now, but it's not at a level which makes people notice, nor is it at a level where people can't get equivalent stuff in PvE. And until that changes, nobody's going to care about PvP or the blog posts. Sorry. But what do you think? Am I completely off base here, or is this sort of generally in the right ballpark? Please let me know in the comments below. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. A huge thanks to the patrons who continue to make these videos possible. I'm Ascendant Nomad, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.